Okay, we're live. I love the 30-second countdown. You can really build yourself up. I'm super excited to be here. I love doing these live streams. We called it Beyond the Canvas. And funnily enough, I didn't even realize when we decided on the name that Beyond the Canvas, the acronym for Beyond the Canvas is BTC. So it feels very apt. We have three absolute, genuinely, it was a coincidence. We laughed about it afterwards. We have three legends with us. I'm super honored and super privileged to be joined today by Hafftka, Zoe, and Eka. They're going to introduce themselves. I'm sure they need no introduction, but if you don't know them, I think it's a great chance to get to know them. We're live on our Twitter, so make sure to share it around if you're watching. Love to see everyone tuning in. We've already got, almost 40 people tuned in, which is amazing. We're here to talk about the Gamma Blind Box, but we can dive into that later. How about let's introduce ourselves? Because honestly, and I say this and I really mean it, you three have produced some of the most incredible art on Bitcoin. We're very lucky to be able to work with each one of you at Gamma. You come with a wealth of experience and, rich histories and different styles. But one thing which I'll add before that's enough for me for a bit is when I came to you and approached you about creating this piece of work, I very purposefully and very specifically did not give you a theme. I didn't give you a colorway. I said, you create what feels authentic to you. And somehow, it's almost like you were in tune with each other. The three pieces are really cohesive, which I just found incredible. When you look at them next to each other, they're very distinctly your individual styles, but they work really well together. And I just found that astonishing as well. So you must have been in tune with each other somehow, but enough of that. I don't know, just so you don't cut each other off, maybe we'll go, Michael and then Zoe and Hafftka, introduce yourselves, say hello to audience. We've got over 70 people tuning in now, but yeah, let's go. This is exciting.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Brett. Thank you, Zoe. Thank you, Eka, for being in this with me, and I'm in it with you. And I love the community aspect of being an artist, and it's best expressed here with you guys in Web3. So what more can I say? I'm an artist just like you two. Let's fucking go.
So, yeah, I guess, Michael, before we get to Zoe and Eka, obviously you could tell a long story, I'm sure, but, imagine somebody to know who you were, which I'd be shocked if that's true. You've been creating art for a long time, and it's amazing. Do you want to
Sure.
It almost feels a bit ridiculous to say squeeze it in, but who is Hafftka?
Okay, well, I've been an artist for a long time. I've been an artist for 50 years, but the really cool thing that I want to share, and that's why I didn't go into my long biography, is really being an artist is always about the here and now. It doesn't really matter that I've been doing it. I have been doing it for 50 years and with success. So I'm proud of that success. I don't want to be overly modest about it. I'm very, very proud of it, but you live or die by your next piece, period. And that's really how I feel. Like everything is about what I'm going to do next or what I'm doing right now. And I think the cool thing about that is not so much that that's my attitude. It pretty much connects me with other artists because I think that's actually true. I'm going to ask you, Zoe and Eka, if you feel the same way. I really feel that it's kind of a unique career to have, to be so in the present, to be so dependent on expressing your inspiration right at the moment. So yes, while it's true I have a long career, it's better to discuss that long career when I'm dead. And I hope that's not a long time from now. I hope that is a long time.
Is a long time. Is a long time, correct.
I hope that discussion doesn't happen now. Okay, yeah. So really, that's what I think. I think it's all about me in the present. So, the piece that I did for Gamma, is very appropriately about Bitcoin. So it's kind of a meme and the Satoshi meme. And, I just approached it, pretty much like, how do I draw something that's really relevant to the community? And that's what my piece is about. And I'm very curious to see Zoe's piece and Eka's piece. I haven't seen it yet. So,
we'll pull them up. We'll pull them up. Yeah.
Cool.
We'll share them for sure. Yeah, no, I think that's brilliant. And I agree with you. And I think it's a pertinent lesson just in life. Obviously, our histories and how we've grown up and all of these different things shape us, but it's obviously how we are and our focus being much more present and not acknowledging what's happened to us, but living in the present is such a, I know Eka and I have spoken about that in our podcast actually, but yeah, it's conceptually, it's so important.
Yeah, the past is very cool, and it's good to look back and see your successes, but really the key is to try and succeed in the present. And, that's really what I'm about. So I'm not so focused on where I've been. I have been in the trad art world. I am now in Web3 and the trad art world. I don't see that distinction. I only mention that because a lot of other people see the big distinction. But I really think, as I did when I first started out, it's about art. And art is everywhere. And it doesn't really matter whether we call it the trad art world. It's just the trad art world is just another network to show in. The Web3 art world is just this network to show in. So as far as the art goes, it's not so much the network. It is the fact of making art.
Love it. Well, Zoe, love to hear from you. I'd love, feel free to add anything that you want to that, but then obviously introduce yourself. You've got an amazing story to doing super well, releasing your art on Bitcoin, completely different style, your own thing. Yeah. Tell, for the people who don't know you and are watching, we've got 170 odd people who have tuned in or are tuning in. Who is Zoe Louise?
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for having me today. And I just learned yesterday who else was going to be in this drop. And when it was Eka and Hafftka, I was like, oh, that's so cool. I've respected these two since years ago, when we first came here. So it's a privilege. It's a privilege to speak here today. Always learning, always ears wide open. I feel like I'm probably at the beginning of being an artist in a long spectrum of time. And yeah, you two are more in the middle and nearing maturity, and it's I'm just all ears, so I don't have a lot to add into all of that. But I'm here in New Zealand.
I'm trying to regress. I want to go backwards. I'm trying to
We can swap time for a little bit.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's good.
I don't identify with being mature that much.
That's the way. That is the way. Yeah.
Very much so. But yes, it's Friday morning here in New Zealand. I do a lot of my work in the physical world and digitalize it through a photo and put it onto the Bitcoin blockchain, and really playing on that impermanence and permanence, the time we have here, our breathing bodies, and then what happens after that, and what you leave behind, and what you leave for people that you'll never meet, and things like that. So I do a lot of stuff that I've learnt, I guess, from what I've lived through. So I pull a lot of stuff from past into present, and then into future when I'm not here. But when you asked me to do this, I was like, oh, yes. I didn't even look at the kind of T's and C's. Of course I did. But yeah, it was a privilege to get this opportunity. And it made me think, what would I do, for a community drop like this? I had to kind of think, but I came back to just what I would normally do, and what was in front of me. And you talked about the present, Hafftka, and I had these roses that I had bought a few days before, and I was like, well, they will be a part of this work. That's what's happening right now in the studio when you asked me. So I'm going to release, kind of on time what that is. So yeah, the work kind of went a bit darker than I probably hoped, but it's always kind of received lightly. But it was inspiring to do, interesting, and it was very cool to see them all together when you released them yesterday.
Yeah, we'll pull that up. Maybe we'll pull up the full artworks if you've posted them, or I'll definitely pull up that teaser from our post. Interestingly, the way in which you create it's very much in the present, because the petals, the roses, don't have such a lifespan. And so it's very much here and now when you're, using paint and using petals and creating in the way that you do. Have you actually sort of consciously thought about that when you're doing it?
Yeah, I've thought, like, some people ask me where I get like the words from, and do I write notes and things like that. But the petals and the interaction with paint and suffocation and reflection on the mirror, it's all kind of bringing out in me what's happening, subconsciously in here. And I want to get that onto a ledger or a blockchain in real time. Like, I don't plan too much into the future about what's coming next, or it's kind of as much as I can get out of here into a space where someone can kind of read it in time. I think it's interesting. It's interesting you brought up present, because I think I do that a lot. I don't know what's happening next month, kind of thing. Yeah,
that is interesting. And Eka, last but certainly not least, I was, very proud. I was nervous. I was so relieved and glad when each of you said yes when I approached you to be part of this drop. You've created something that it's interesting. Obviously, I don't want to say not in the way that you usually do, because obviously artists create wide and varied works. But yeah, it's something a little bit more unique potentially that you've created of late. But you've implemented your, the AR layer, which is something that you definitely do. But before we talk about that, tell us about, obviously, again, 3 artists who really didn't need much introduction. But Eka, tell us about yourself, what you do. I hope that people do know who you are, but for those who don't, and even as a refresher for those who do, go for it.
Hi, I'm so thrilled to be here. I'm such a big fan of Zoe and Hafftka, and absolutely incredible synchronicities going on. When you will see the pieces, you probably will all understand also. But it's just insane. And yes, the pieces probably not exactly like, because I like to feel every small corner of the artwork, and this was one breezes, like it's more it has a central figure, but it's I let it breathe and to be like more has lots of light. It reflects my recent studies of singularity, and which is basically everything merges, the time as a matter, and the energy, and there is only light. So it's also lots of archetypal research, and I love to create bridges of this world which is seen and which is unseen. This is why I create with lots of layers, and some layers are hidden, and people don't see them, but they can see them with the AR. And what I found out that some people, they are able to see through the artwork, even if it's in 2D, which is, I find it fascinating, because we don't even imagine of our superpowers and our capacities to read things. And we see colors, we all see colors differently. This is why it's also such a unique way to communicate. But we automatically align our energy with the colors, with what we see. So it's visual music. It's very vibrational. And I really love also how when you were talking about the community and the connection being created. I really love what's Gamma doing to enhance this connection. Also with the collectors, which is very unique. And I think it's in Web3, it's something being created, and especially on Bitcoin, it's something like a real connection, very meaningful. And it's also it adds up with the numbers, because there's music, which is obviously the numbers. There's colors, which is also can be translated in numbers, and there's Bitcoin. with a code, and everything has a unique number and the Satoshi number. You have the inscription number, the block number, and it all creates like a powerful symphony, which is pretty much the extension of the art.
Couldn't agree more. I think, and each of you have used it uniquely in your own ways. Let's riff on that, because it's always good. Let's be in the present. May as well talk about what you have brought up there. Michael, I know you've been playing with reinscription. Zoe, I know with your bouquet of intimate, oh my God, sorry, passings. That's the word. That's the title, isn't it? Bouquet of intimate passings. You had a look and acquired and inscribed using special sats. And Eka, I know you've done similar, and you've been very focused and played around with sat numbers and whatnot. So there's these different layers. When you are inscribing on Bitcoin, there are different things that are very specific to Bitcoin that you can't do elsewhere that, yeah, you can have. But as an artist, tell us about just those opportunities and like why you find them inspiring, and, you know, what you've done. If anyone can jump in, and then feel free to ask each other. I don't have to lead it, but I'm always happy to, because I've got lots to say.
Well, one of the coolest things I find, and I guess this does feed into my career, is that I've made physical art for the longest time, and I love making physical art, and I love making digital art. But regardless of the medium that I'm making art in, the fact is that when you make something that's just one piece of physical art, it really winds up in one person's house, and or it winds up, in my case, in museums. However, museums, it all sounds really good, but works are not always up on the wall. And even when they are up on the wall, people have to go to a museum. So one of the things that's really attracted me to on-chain art is, first of all, it's absolutely permanent. And I know from experience from using physical mediums, that's just not the case. So it's absolutely permanent, but it's absolutely intimate in a way that is very, very different from the physical art. So first of all, a lot of the physical art I've made is very, very large, like the painting behind me. They're somewhat monumental. So that right away has certain advantages, but on the other hand, it does cut down on intimacy. The fact is that people have to go to it to see it. One of the things that really attracted me about on-chain art was actually this whole new generational thing of art on one's phones, or art on iPads or on screens. It's actually very, very personal. So one of the things I really, really love about making this art is not only can I explore, as I have been for many, many years, the physical realm, but the digital realm has allowed me to make my art intimately available to many, many people at the same time. I think this is absolutely a kind of revolution in art. It suits well, it's born of technology, but then suits the technological change that is evolutionary and happening the way people receive art. So I just, I can't say enough good things about, art on Bitcoin, art on chain in general. And this, it just blows me away all the time. There's nothing lost, and there's so many things to be gained. I recently, just to follow up, to make this example real, I recently minted on Bitcoin works of mine that are in the Museum of Modern Art and in the British Museum. Now, though they're up for show in those places, well, the fact is people have to go there. It's also a less intimate surrounding. So now that it's on the Bitcoin blockchain, it's actually more permanent, and everybody can enjoy it intimately in their home.
Yeah, to follow on from that, I think getting people in their most comfortable, vulnerable, intimate state is when they're at home behind their phone or their computer. So they're kind of a bit more open to what's in front of them in the screen, as opposed to being in quite a big, daunting museum space, and you're there at a certain time of day. It's quite clinical to a degree, but to get people, in that point of vulnerability to really feel the artwork, it's at home, it's on your phone, it's late at night, it's early in the morning. I think about that often. I'm glad you touched on that.
Yeah. Well, I think art, and especially challenging art, I have a long experience of making things that are somewhat challenging or dark, as you said. And I don't shy away from that. But what I've noticed is that requires real contemplation. I think a lot of art, unfortunately, after the whole pop art movement, a lot of the audience became used to like instant satisfaction of a very superficial image. And while that's perfectly valid, that cuts out most art that has been historically present, and cuts out the idea that art can be something that's contemplated and goes a little deeper than pop art. So I want to be very clear that I'm not being critical of pop art, although that's valid too. You know, one could be completely critical. My feeling is that art has to give something to the audience. And I like to say very clearly that art has to give something meaningful, and the audience has to derive meaning from it. And some of that's very limited with art that you just glance at once. From my practice of making art, I understand there's a lot of subtleties involved. It deeply unfolds. You know, Eka's talking about layers that are hidden, about things that are archetypal, about things that are unconscious. I know that's true, Zoe, in your paintings too, that it requires looking at it more than just briefly in 1 second. And so this medium actually is a big plus for that. And also coming from the trad art world, you know, it was all about monumental big paintings. I showed many, many big paintings, some 20 feet wide. Now, all of that it's kind of cool when you first start doing it, but on a certain level, while on the one hand, it's impressive, it also does separate you from the audience. So I actually really value, you know, when I think of painters that I really admire, like Paul Klee, for example. They were all very small paintings. They were all meant to be contemplated really in a very, very intimate way. I think that's perfectly valid. Non-chain art helps with that.
Yeah, the ability to be able to revisit a piece at any time. You know, I can't really just fly back to New York and go to that museum that I saw that painting in. And revisiting a piece in a different state of mind, or even at a different point of your life, it's like, it's always going to look the same, you know, how it was then. But yeah, you get to see your change in it as opposed to never being able to see it again. But yeah,
and you can send it to your kids. You know, it's kind of cool. We can share art all the time. You know, so there's so many pluses to digital art, to on-chain, to digitizing work. And I just find that all phenomenal.
Cool.
Eka, did you want to add anything to this one?
Yeah, I mean, I really resonate with everything you were saying. Also, you mentioned children. I was thinking about how this expression, artists create art for people who were not yet born. And I can confirm that like children really resonate with what I do. And I think we are seeing the emergence of new humans who are really sensitive, who are much more unconditioned compared to our generation, when we were told how we were supposed to be successful. I'm talking like about myself, because I changed careers 3 times. Used to be a lawyer, used to be a financial analyst, and I think we are in the place of possibilities where everything is possible. I think Bitcoin plays like a pretty important role in this new world, because it's a new way of seeing the money. It's a new way of seeing financial freedom and also artistic freedom and expression. So I think it's like perfectly aligns with the world we want to live in.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I mean, decentralization and freedom are really core themes to any artist. And I think that's why the Web3 art world even formed. It was very, very attractive to artists. Also, the whole notion of being free from, intermediaries. Even though you could say like a platform is some sort of an intermediary, it's free and clear. It's not trying to tell artists what to do. So that's a vast improvement over the way it was in the trad art world for the longest time. And I also always resonated with the idea that I'm making art for the kids of my collectors. I felt that way for many, many years. A lot of times people would buy works of mine in their show, and what was really cool was their children's reaction to it. And after all, they grow up with my paintings. Very often collectors bought my work, hung it up in their house, and it was sort of a statement of some sort. And sometimes it's just a statement of being hip. But the kids actually grew up with it and saw things into it that are very different from what their parents saw. So I always thought that was super cool, still do.
I love this conversation because if you think about even this live stream, I'm in Australia. Zoe's kind of close in New Zealand. We're way down under. Hafftka, you're in America, and Eka, I think right now you're in France.
Yes.
We're having this conversation. We're all in different countries. Bitcoin art is now like a world gallery. All your art is there. We can all see each other's art. We can celebrate each other's art. Whereas in a past life, if you were based in a location and that's where you created art and that's where you displayed your art, I might never have known that it existed, or perhaps I did, but I'd never really even be able to see it. So it really is fascinating, and that connection that you can have with the artists and the collectors as well, given all of the technology available.
It does liberate you from geographical familiarity, and that's been true with music also. So in past centuries, you were dependent on the town musician or the town artist, and they were part of your culture, so they didn't give you any insight into any other transcendent culture. Although, historically, for example, Rubens, who was a Flemish painter, was appreciated in Spain, but those were only the top artists that somehow managed to sort of cross a few countries. But nowadays, everything is totally international, and you're not limited, number one, to your culture. You actually can see other cultures, and you are not limited to the mediocrity of just your neighborhood. So this is really a vast improvement for all of us.
Eka or Zoe, feel free if you'd like to add anything to it, or you don't have to as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Just coming online, like you say, the different cultures, the different countries, huge influence on how I think about distributing my art and why I like coming here every day. And I really like that aspect that you touched on, Brett, is being able to, we get to live next to the artists that we are here painting with, and we get to really endure their stories just through their Twitter feed and how they kind of handle that. And I think that's an art in itself, how people do social media and how close they make it to them. I think I would say that's really unique. I wasn't here 20 years ago, but that's phenomenal. I get so much direct information from the artist. I love that. Yeah, that directness and that truth, and that nobody can kind of distort how the artist was. It's like, no, I lived that, and I live with their tweets. And yeah, I think it's a privilege that we get that closeness, and collectors alike. Absolutely.
I think one of the things that I've noticed is that being an artist is a very unique vocation, and requires a certain kind of mindset. Of course, any specialty requires a certain kind of mindset. But the people that consume art, collectors or just observers of art, it doesn't really have to be somebody that actually literally buys art, but the audience for art are very different from the people that make art, and they see it very differently. And that is phenomenal too. There is something to be said for that. My vision of art is a very insider kind of look at it. It's kind of limited, and what's important to me might not really be important to anybody. However, there's also some sort of fascinating beauty to the obsession of making art and to the subtleties that we bring to art. So nowadays, actually, because of Web3, because of the familiarity, people do have access to our thought process, not mediated by, for example, galleries. Like for many, many years, I showed in galleries, and really what people knew about me was only what the gallery put in the press release. And very often that was just nonsense. And nonsense that I went along with too, because really, who's got the energy to argue all the time? And it just that's the way it is. And their mission is different than mine. My mission is somehow, maybe I'm stupid, but it's kind of some weird combination of spiritual vision of the world, change the world, all this well-meaning nonsense that goes through an artist's head. But the other side of it, if somebody's spending their money on the space and showing you, they're just interested in getting rid of it. They're not really interested in how you believe this is going to heal the world. So actually, what's very cool here too is that we get to really share our deepest concerns, and we actually humanize the actual practice of making art in a deep way. And so, I hope the audience is also taking advantage of that it's not all numbers, not all resale, that it is about finding meaning in this work. Because, when it really comes down to it, and this also goes to me having a long career, what I find most rewarding about being an artist is the ability, the beauty of having the privilege and opportunity to be free and to sort of dance, just dance this kind of vision that there's no real practicality to it. It's all about some sort of inner beauty, some sort of dance of consciousness. And doing that is really joyous. So I really want my audience to dance with me. I don't want my audience to just see it as an investment or see it as something that's static. I really want them to enjoy this really beautiful freedom to be yourself in a way that's utterly impractical. We can't really do that in other professions. I'm very, very aware of this. Other professions actually have responsibilities. If you're a physician, you have a lot of responsibility. If you're an artist, there is no responsibility at all. You could just go crazy. And that is really fucking beautiful.
Well, that comes back to the present. We're here right now, and this is the piece we're working on, and that's exactly it, for sure. I guess, like you said, you humanize the transaction. You can do that here. You can meet the collectors. You can conversational about the piece. You can't really do that in a gallery or not too many other places. So,
well, for me,
I appreciate those thoughts.
Yeah, what I'm hoping really is that it's not a commodity, a work of art. It is actually something that is a little indescribable. It's not just the actual physical art or the digital art. It's not just the image. It's what the image does to you mentally inside. It's a feeling. There's a really it goes into the nervous system, and it is transformed through that communication. So it is really like a breath of life. It's a very unique, cosmically mystical event. So to look at it as a commodity is a real mistake. Really, it deadens the whole endeavor. So and it's very unique. And again, I talk about responsibility. If you create a commodity, if you build a car, it's got to drive down the road in a way that doesn't get you wrecked and doesn't get you killed. That's not true about art. You could really have a great accident and a crash in a work of art, and it can be orgasmic and cosmic and wonderful. And that's the beauty of it. The beauty of it is free. We can let go. And that's why it suits this community so well. I'm really hoping here that, we achieve this really, the beauty of that I feel in making art. I'm hoping the consumer of that gets that level of connection and excitement and fun. Frankly, it's a lot of fun.
I find this very inspiring. And Eka, I feel like, you mentioned earlier you worked in much more traditional fields prior to becoming an artist. So this transformative, humanizing aspect that Zoe and Hafftka have been riffing on really fits that almost metamorphosis for you.
Absolutely. Also, I was really inspired to hear about the connection with the art, and I wanted to share a story about Pamela, who is my collector and a friend. She collected a work of art which is called a humble burger, and there is Sacré-Cœur in the painting, like one of the elements among others. There are like lots of small elements, and she was really obsessed with it. Where is it? I was like, it's in Paris. It's called Sacré-Cœur. Sacré-Cœur, he said. And she was so obsessed with this painting, and she was, I have French ancestors, and she ended up coming for NFT Paris. It was her first trip to France, and I offered her a bag with this painting, and she was taking picture of this bag in the Louvre, and she was like, she developed real connection with the piece, and she was like, "Did you name her?" Because there's a girl on the painting, and I no, I didn't think of naming her. I named her. It's an incredible story, and also the bridge. The bridge, the art being the bridge, and also she's a lawyer, and I was. Oh, I used to be a lawyer too. So I mean, it's the whole story. It's also of us being connected on all continents and creating this kind of bridges, really meaningful and transformative. And I just love it.
Yeah, that's absolutely beautiful. It's really cool what happens when that whole story, now part of that piece, would never have happened if you didn't share that artwork. What happens when you share a piece and how other people take on that piece, and they almost take it on better than you. You're like, all right, got to let that piece go. Someone else, is a lot closer with it now. And yeah, interesting you talk about that as a bridge. The art as the bridge between that connection and then, where it goes from there. Beautiful.
And it's interesting. I'm curious, just your thoughts before we will pull up the artworks. I'm curious your thoughts on. It's exciting and it's amazing how globally connected we are, but I suppose it also is a vulnerable thing. You have to post, and people are scrolling, and you want people to stop and hopefully read your posts. Like there are unique challenges within how how glorious the opportunity is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think figuring out how to have a good relationship with your social media is probably key to being here. And I think a good relationship is kind of not worrying too much about it and saying as much kind of truth as you can, and what you're doing in the studio and what the artwork's about. To kind of garner the right people, or the people that you want to enjoy your artwork. And sometimes, I guess those posts that get 3 likes are often more interesting conversations than the ones that kind of go a bit viral. To not get caught up in the metrics, probably.
Yeah, and Michael, you're the master of the video. You've like embedded yourself in the culture such that you create these videos. It's super enthusiastic. They're very you. You've obviously, like, I'm sure that didn't happen at the start. Like, you've kind of evolved to a point where you do things that feel authentic to you, but you also know how to kind of engage the audience, because it is like a very dynamic, fast-paced environment.
Well, actually, it started out, really making videos started out as a matter of convenience.
Yeah.
I didn't really like writing tweets, and I felt like, reading is just not the appropriate thing for this medium. And I can always communicate better just by talking. So, very fortunately, my attitude towards social media basically is just be yourself. And I'm very grateful that I've been welcomed just being myself. But also, I'm in a kind of unique position in that I'm older. And being older, I also see part of my mission. I don't know if I would call it really a mission, but it's obvious that, I got a lot of help from older artists, George McNeil, Norris Embry, Francis Bacon, Bill de Kooning. I met them all, and, and other artists. Those artists always were just very straightforward, just flat out straightforward and open. And, I appreciated that. I saw, actually with my contemporaries, there was a lot of unnecessary competition. There was a lot of skullduggery. There was a lot of, there was just a kind of lack of openness and a kind of, manipulative crap that just wasn't really pleasant. But when I met older artists, they were just very open and friendly, and they already did it. Now, I'm in this position at this point in my life, and I still absolutely believe in art, and I believe in the beauty of art. And so whenever I go anywhere, there's always a lot of artists younger than me. There are hardly any older than me. So, I'm 71. So at any rate, I just feel like if there's any sort of message I can give, that is just to encourage people to be themselves, because we're in a very, very big world. It doesn't help to be super self-critical. Just be yourself. Put yourself out there. There's always going to be somebody that appreciates what you do. And from that seed, you're going to grow an audience. So it's not so important to look at the competition. It's not so important to look at what other artists are doing and evaluate what they're doing, or measure their success against your success. That's all kind of nonsense. What's really, truly important is going deeper in yourself and allowing people to see your insides. That's what it's all about. It's about revealing and about being free. Oddly enough, we live in this ecosystem where a lot of people have fake names and, they're behind masks. I never considered that, because I was always out front. There was no option when I started out. I had to be Michael Hafftka. I couldn't be anything else. Pseudonyms just didn't work. So I think the idea of being open and just being free is really something that's just wonderful, and I try to encourage it. I'm just basically trying to encourage other artists to express themselves.
Yeah, I think that's really pertinent advice. Zoe, did you want to add to that? Sorry.
Oh, I wanted to say like.
Eka, sorry, I wasn't sure.
Oh,
sorry,
sorry.
Eka, yeah.
Sorry. No, go ahead.
No, Eka, go. I thought it was Zoe, but the noise came from a different. It's all good. That was you.
I was thinking about the concept of competition. I don't know if because its space is so like small and early, and we're all pioneers. I think like there's really this sense of competition. It's like we're all uplifting each other, and it's like we all win. When other artists win, we all win. So it's pretty much also what I appreciate also in this space, because I agree, like in traditional art world, it's a little bit different.
Well, the traditional art world is very small compared to the potential of this art world. And so the traditional art world, it's geographical. I mean, when I was showing early on, it was even though there were some shows in other parts of the country or other parts of the world, it was basically all in Soho. So when you walk down the street, every other artist that was showing too, we were all on the street, we were all there, so and it was all on a certain level. It tied into the fact that this gallery had a bigger gallery, this gallery had there was competition in everything, and that, I'm not, there's nothing really wrong with that competition. It's kind of unnecessary, because the truth is that collectors buy a lot of art. They don't focus just on one artist. So, it's a little silly to get too caught up in that. But, it's quite interesting that, it was the older artists that were just more open.
And I'd like to comment, obviously I work at Gamma naturally, but as a collector, I've been able to collect each one of you. I own each one of you. And a pleasure. No, it's a privilege, honestly. But I don't think I would have ever been able to. Maybe I would never have come across you either. I hope that one day I would have. If this space didn't exist, I probably wouldn't have owned you. So I think the ability for us to then collect art on this global scale, and it not just be for sale in a physical gallery, that is very special. It's like the accessibility, I think, is something, and the global accessibility. I know that we've touched on it, but I really am not sure. I think everyone knows it, but I really don't think we acknowledge how it's amazing. It's so amazing. Like
That touches on another thing. That really touches on another thing. For many, many years, when I showed in galleries were never interested in lower priced works of mine, smaller paintings or works on paper. Like, no galleries really ever wanted to show works on paper. I used to have to force galleries to show works on paper because they wanted to show large paintings. And, that created big limitations. Some of my paintings were like 78 by 62 inch paintings were $50,000. So that right away cuts out how many people can buy them. So I'm not making art only for people that can afford expensive art. So the opportunity here is to really make art for everyone. That's a really fantastic thing.
I think that's a really nice segue into the drop on Monday, because obviously it is a free mint for the winter pass holders. So some of our, biggest and best collectors, they're all very excited about it. I'm going to pull up the post, so it gives us a bit of a snippet of what the artworks look like. Here we go. So we can see just
the whole.
I can't pull them up. I can pull up Zoe's. Michael, have you posted yours? If you posted them, I can pull them up. Otherwise, I can grab them on Gamma. Actually, that's what I'll do. Let's leave it on this, and then I'll sort it out on my side. But this is a little bit of a teaser of each one. There's going to be one of our engineers has built an engine whereby it's like editions of each one that'll be randomized into the same mint. Three very, very lucky collectors are also going to win the one of ones. But Michael, beyond that, like, as you said, we've talked a lot about, legacy and artists' legacy. And I think that obviously, naturally, if artists are selling work for $50,000, that's brilliant and amazing for that artist. And if the people can afford it. But I think it's a fascinating concept that the digital art realm has allowed all three of you and all the artists involved to be able to sell work from, a lesser price right up to a greater price. And so everyone can own a bit of that artist. Like I can say I own a Hafftka. I know, for example, Coldy, who you probably all know, he's very passionate about and Jack Butcher, he's very passionate about just everybody being able to afford something of his, whether it's like his, less expensive work right up to his more expensive work. Yeah, I think that conceptually that's really fascinating because in time, maybe that's going to be worth more, but despite the financial aspect of it, everyone can own you and get that joy out of owning an Eka or owning a Hafftka or owning a Zoe.
Yeah, well, in the trad art world, what very often happened was the print medium was used to provide lower priced works for collectors. But even that got very, very exaggerated. And then when it was the most famous artists of all, like Chagall or Salvador Dali's, the prints wound up not even being made by them. So the whole thing got very, very diluted. And over here, whether it's an expensive work of art, or a cheaper work of art, a less costly work of art, it's still made exactly by the artist. And that's a phenomenal thing.
Zoe or Eka, while I'm working on finding your individual pieces, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, agreed. Just that, to be able to view art and consume art is one thing, but ownership, it changes your relationship with the artwork. I know the artwork that I've purchased off other artists, it's different. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool that you get to be able to do that when people present artwork at a lower cost. All for it.
And it's that community. Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah.
Sorry. I just thought I should mention that Zoe is my mentor in getting a better, the highest quality standard inscriptions. I just saw what she was doing with the inscriptions, the really big files, greatest quality, parent-child, on-chain metadata, and rare sites, everything. And I was like, I want to create like Zoe. I learned how to do that. So I obviously wrote to Zoe, and she mentored me. So I'm super grateful because now I'm like the highest standard of inscribing.
That's very beautiful.
So, yeah.
Eka, that's very beautiful.
This is Eka's piece. Yeah, and it has an AR layer. But yeah, do you want to tell us about it? And for the people watching, we're over 400 now, which is lovely, or at least have tuned in. Yeah, tell us about this piece. And this is going to be available in the Blind Box Mint, which is super exciting. We had a lovely comment from Crafted. Enjoyed the discussion. Got to run. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning in. That's a real pleasure as well. But yeah, Eka, tell us about the piece. We'll do these briefly because we'll run through each of your pieces. But yeah, tell us about it.
She's called Saint Mary, and she's an archetypal femininity and beauty and abundance, and she's pretty much a portal and invitation to the best world. And I'm super proud that she lives on Bitcoin, and I think every time the piece being inscribed, it adjusts the vibrational level of the whole chain. And I love when they call Bitcoin the time chain, because we were talking about the time, and it's a perfect place to capture moments, and also to capture the energy and what the artist felt at this particular moment. We are in the very beginning of spring in our hemisphere, at least.
Yeah,
And,
not down here.
sorry, half of us are not. But
Yeah,
yes,
tonight we got the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, which is that's quite special. Sorry, keep going.
And she's also in between two eclipses. And I think it's super powerful, energetic moment of bringing the good energies, something which is a hope, which is beauty, and she's inviting you to see what's beyond. This is why there is the AR extension, and yeah.
Oh, well, look, that's beautiful. It's a gorgeous piece. I can't wait for people to collect it. I can't wait for people to explore the AR layer. What do they need a particular app to do that?
Yeah, there's an app. It's called Artivive.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, so we'll certainly put links out to that so people who do collect it or pick it up off secondary can download Artivive and immerse themselves in that AR component. Let's switch across to Zoe's piece. Did that work? Yes, it worked. The Raven. Wow. And again, funnily enough, obviously, like I said at the start, there's a cohesion across these, even though I gave you no guidance, which I love that so much, just on a personal level. But Zoe, tell us about the Raven. It's very distinctly what you do with paint and petals and a lot of emotion poured into it.
Yeah, this piece, I guess kind of technically or physically, is painted on a mirror with paint, and there's rose petals, and the rose petals have taken on that paint as well, and then using the sunlight coming in from the window to kind of play around with the shadows and the darks and the lights that I can do there. But the piece, they kind of lead me down funny places. This particular piece, it was about, or the Raven, as most people would know, the symbology around that. It's just very similar to the Black Rose. It talks a lot about mourning and about death and about all the things that come with that. But then you look further into the symbology of the Raven, and it goes into more understanding places and more warmer places, and a more fuller perspective of life. So this piece is inviting in the darkness, sitting with it and allowing it to change you and to breathe out warmer air. So we tend to be quite opaque. We tend to cage in times of vulnerability, and it was about allowing it to come in, working it through, and being more freer from those experiences. But I did have some words that I wrote, I guess, in the metadata that I could say, and that would probably round out the piece.
For sure. I can pull that up maybe. Let me find it.
Oh, that's right. I've got it here.
Oh, okay. Oh, great. Yeah, that's better.
With the midnight thorn, pierce her opaque skin. Let it weep until enough warmth has entered to set her free.
That's beautiful.
So, very much a piece of me. I didn't really consider, I guess, the people that might collect it or might get it. I just kind of stayed in my own lane. So, it'd be interesting to see maybe new people who find my work and what happens with that. But very grateful to be part of this drop.
And just on that, beautiful words. Obviously, it really makes me. I think that that permanence in the ability to write or to label or to name your work as well. I think that that's really interesting because, like we said, we're creating, in the here and now, and people are collecting it, hopefully. But then their children, it might get passed down or sold on, and people are going to be able to read those words or see the title or see that it was who it was by and make their own inferences. And I think that preservation of information as well as preservation of art and legacy, that's really fascinating too. That poem now is on chain forever.
Agreed. You don't so much get that when you buy a painting and you take it home. You kind of don't really take the little tag that goes with it. But for that to be right there, those words are right there with the painting. So totally becomes a part of it.
Yeah. And let's finish off as we sort of start to wrap up. Michael, with your piece, I love it. Poor old Dorian Nakamoto. You and I were laughing about him on a phone call the other day. So iconic. I love him. He's so iconic.
Well, I love the expression, and I wanted to make a piece that's really a meme and Bitcoin oriented, because in this ecosystem, memes are valid forms of art. So, you know, the whole mystery of who Satoshi is, and this poor guy Dorian lived down the block from Hal Finney, you know, and his like incredible expression is a wellspring for artists forever. It's been done in so many forms. So I gave him the Bitcoin orange, and I painted him very freely. I enjoyed that, painting him really in my style. But, you know, Dorian looks as confused as we all are. So, you know, Dorian's trying to say, let's fucking go.
He is.
I'd say it.
He's not there yet.
Yeah. No, I love it. And again, you know, there's that cohesion across even through colorways, and it's fun, and there's juxtaposition in the set. And it is, like you said, each piece actually I know that artists don't have to do this by any stretch, but I would like to say, and I say it as a compliment, that they're each distinctly an Eka, a Hafftka, and a Zoe, and I love that as well. So thank you for putting a piece of yourselves into each of these artworks. And, you know, from the bottom of my heart and, you know, everything we do at Gamma, we're really honored and privileged that you are all a part of this drop, and we can't wait for people to collect it. It might be people that have owned you, or it might be new collectors of yours. And I think it's a really lovely gateway into you three as artists, and hopefully, you know, sort of as Michael says, let's fucking go. It's onwards and upwards from there. And we know we're always pushing and being artists first and trying to expose collectors to all of the artists that, you know, do the honor of working with us at Gamma. So thank you again, in particular, for being part of this drop, to you three.
Well, it's an honor to be working with Gamma. And I just want to say one thing, because we've got a big audience of Gamma pass holders. Brett, you're awesome. And I know, I'm sure Zoe and Eka feel the same way, but the way you've shepherded us onto the platform is a real example, because a lot of platforms just don't care at all. And the concern and the shepherding and the information you give and the help, and I don't really know what your relationship with Zoe or Eka is, but I'm sure you've been just as helpful to them as you have been to me, and you're not. And it's really extraordinary. So to the whole Gamma community, I'm honored to be part of it, but you really made it happen. Thank you.
You're going to make me blush. I really appreciate it. Thank you for those very kind words. It's
really, thank you. I'm sure I'm speaking for Zoe and Eka too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, you're cool, Brett. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Guys, I think that's I feel a little bit like, thank you very much. That's very touching. I'm a pretty emotional guy, so that really, Michael, thank you for those words. And Eka and Zoe, yeah, look, being able to, I'm very, very lucky, I think, to be able to do what I do. So I don't take that for granted. So thank you so much. And I really look forward to this release and working with each one of you and all of the artists on Gamma, you know, as we keep putting out on Bitcoin and keep expanding this world. So that's a great place to leave it. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to everybody in the audience who tuned in. We had over 500, which I think is just awesome. I always love doing these. I love speaking with each of you and, you know, everyone else that joins us at different times. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
A privilege to be in this room. So honored, and looking
Incredible.
forward to the fifth.
All right, Michael, you want to send us off with a big LFG?
Let's fucking go.
See you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.